What if the ultimate wealth secrets weren't held by billionaires on Wall Street, but hidden inside dusty, forgotten manuscripts that alchemists died protecting? Why ancient texts hold the lost science of financial abundance? There's something deeply unsettling about the vaults beneath Europe's oldest libraries. Behind locked doors, protected from public access, sit manuscripts that scholars rarely discuss openly. These aren't ordinary historical documents. They're operational manuals for wealth creation that predate modern capitalism by centuries, containing practices so potent that religious authorities attempted to erase them completely. The few grimoires that survived carry encoded instructions for financial manifestation that go far beyond primitive superstition. They represent a sophisticated understanding of consciousness manipulation and reality engineering that our culture has systematically forgotten. Medieval practitioners understood wealth differently than we do today. For them, prosperity wasn't about working harder or catching lucky breaks. It was the inevitable result of precise energetic alignment between internal state and external reality. Every symbol they inscribed, every ritual performed during specific planetary hours, every sigil charged under particular moon phases functioned as a key unlocking doors to abundance that remain invisible to most people. These weren't random acts of desperation. They were calculated interventions into the fabric of possibility itself, designed to shift probability in favor of the practitioner. And here's what almost nobody realizes about these ancient systems. They never actually disappeared. While common people were taught that wealth comes only through physical labor and fortunate circumstances, certain bloodlines and secret societies preserved the esoteric traditions of financial manifestation. They passed down these grimoire techniques through generations, using them quietly to maintain their positions of power and resource control. The manuscripts that survived contain clear evidence of this: elaborate sigils for wealth attraction, alchemical formulas for resource multiplication, and specific invocations designed to open pathways to financial opportunity. These weren't theoretical exercises. They were practical tools that produced measurable results for those who understood the underlying mechanics. The real difference between ancient wealth rituals and modern manifestation techniques lies in their depth of sophistication. Contemporary approaches often reduce everything to positive thinking or simple visualization, but the grimoires demanded something far more rigorous: complete psychological reprogramming through sustained ritual practice. Practitioners didn't just imagine having money. They systematically dismantled limiting beliefs about scarcity, realigned their energetic signatures with frequencies of abundance, and most importantly, established symbolic contracts with archetypal forces of prosperity embedded in the collective unconscious. Each grimoire provided detailed instructions on crafting personalized sigils, consecrating them under astrologically favorable conditions, and activating them through altered states that bypass rational mind resistance. But here's where things get really interesting. These texts were deliberately written in coded language to protect the knowledge from those unprepared to use it wisely. When an alchemical manuscript referenced gold and silver, it wasn't always discussing physical metals. These were metaphors for elevated consciousness states, the transformation of base ignorance into refined wisdom applied directly to material circumstances. When instructions called for invoking planetary spirits of Jupiter for financial expansion, they were describing precise psychological techniques using universal archetypes of growth and abundance. The rituals worked not through supernatural intervention, but through their ability to reorganize subconscious patterns that actually determine what opportunities you perceive and which actions you take. And this is where everything shifts into immediate relevance. Because those same principles remain completely functional today. We can strip away the medieval symbolism and extract the pure mechanics underneath. What alchemists called planetary alignment, neuroscience now recognizes as brainwave synchronization. What they described as amulet consecration, psychology identifies as behavioral anchoring. What they practiced as ritual repetition, we understand as identity-level habit formation. The power was never in the exotic ingredients or Latin incantations. It always resided in the human capacity to direct consciousness with laser focus, to encode intentions into symbols that speak directly to the unconscious mind, and to access mental states where manifestation becomes not magical, but inevitable. What if forgotten symbols could reprogram your financial reality? The most powerful grimoires weren't spell books in any conventional sense. They were comprehensive systems for reality reconstruction at the psychological level. When you study texts like the Key of Solomon or the Sacred Magic of Abramelin the Mage, what emerges is far more sophisticated than mystical recipes. You're looking at an ancient science of consciousness engineering specifically designed to reshape material circumstances through structured mental discipline, symbolic language, and ritualized behavior patterns that bypass your rational defenses. Sigil creation formed the technological core of these systems, but the real mechanism operating beneath the surface gets missed by almost everyone attempting to use these techniques today. When medieval practitioners drew symbols representing their prosperity intentions, they weren't engaging in artistic expression or religious devotion. They were encoding conscious desires into visual language that the subconscious mind processes directly, without interference from the doubting, fearful rational intellect that constantly sabotages financial goals. The sigil functioned as a bridge between willful intention and the deep mechanisms of manifestation that operate below ordinary awareness. The activation process reveals where true genius lived in these ancient practices. After creating the symbol, practitioners had to charge it energetically through deliberately induced altered states. Some used extended fasting to weaken the rational mind's grip. Others employed intensive meditation to access deeper consciousness layers. Still others utilized ecstatic techniques or moments of intense emotional peak. The objective remained constant across all methods: implant the encoded intention directly into subconscious programming during windows when the barrier between conscious and unconscious temporarily dissolves. In that vulnerable state, the sigil's message penetrates core layers of psyche and begins reorganizing thought patterns, behavioral tendencies, and opportunity perception. But here's what makes this even more fascinating. The planetary timing instructions found throughout grimoires carry layers of psychological sophistication that modern readers completely overlook. When a text demands performing specific rituals during Jupiter's hour on Thursday with the waxing moon, it's not describing astrological superstition. It's prescribing temporal synchronization based on natural rhythms that affect mental and emotional states. Thursday was associated with Jupiter, the archetype of expansion, generosity, and abundance. Conducting wealth rituals on that day meant aligning practice with psychological states naturally more receptive to growth-oriented thinking. The waxing moon amplified this effect, as biological research confirms we experience increased energy and optimism during this lunar phase. What almost nobody grasps about these elaborate rituals is how they functioned as commitment architecture. These weren't casual practices you performed whenever motivation struck. They demanded meticulous preparation, days of purification, gathering specific materials, creating sacred spaces, reciting complex invocations. The entire ritual structure served a profound psychological purpose, convincing the unconscious mind that something extraordinary was occurring. When you invest significant time, energy, and focused attention into a ritual, your psyche interprets this as a signal of extreme importance and mobilizes corresponding internal resources. And this is where the translation into contemporary application becomes crystal clear. The essential principles can be extracted and adapted without losing effectiveness. Modern sigil creation for specific financial objectives follows identical mechanics, transforming desires into visual symbols loaded with personal meaning. Planetary alignment translates into choosing psychologically optimal moments for manifestation practices. Elaborate ritual converts into structured routines of visualization, affirmation, and directed action that signal to the unconscious mind the absolute seriousness of your intention. The power never resided in rare ingredients or ancient languages. It always existed in the capacity to orchestrate all mental, emotional, and behavioral resources toward a single crystallized objective that your entire being recognizes as non-negotiable. The connection between ancient parchment and contemporary prosperity runs deeper than surface similarities. When we deconstruct grimoire practices with modern psychological understanding, something remarkable emerges. Today's manifestation teachers are essentially repackaging millennia-old Hermetic principles with updated vocabulary. The law of attraction isn't a New Age discovery. It was known as the Hermetic principle of correspondence thousands of years ago. As above, so below. As within, so without. Your external reality always mirrors your internal alignment. Alchemists understood this with surgical precision and built practical systems to operationalize this fundamental truth. The concept of energetic alignment permeating every prosperity grimoire translates seamlessly into contemporary frameworks. When ancient texts discuss purifying the auric field before wealth rituals, they're describing exactly what modern psychology calls cognitive reframing around money. It means eliminating toxic thought patterns about finances, dissolving limiting beliefs inherited from family or culture, and cultivating an internal state of genuine receptivity to abundance. Medieval masters recognized that you cannot attract prosperity while carrying shame, guilt, or terror around wealth. These emotional frequencies create vibrational static that blocks manifestation pathways regardless of how many rituals you perform. What's truly remarkable is how they transformed abstract intentions into concrete, measurable actions. Creating a financial sigil today operates identically to how branding experts design powerful logos for corporations. You're condensing the essence of what you wish to manifest into visual form that communicates directly with non-verbal consciousness layers. An entrepreneur sketching their company's visual identity is unknowingly using sigil creation techniques that medieval alchemists mastered. The only difference is that ancient practitioners did this consciously, with explicit magical intention guiding every line and curve. The ancestral concept of cosmic offering also manifests in modern principles of financial circulation. Grimoires frequently instructed practitioners to donate portions of their resources as a way of signaling to universal forces that they trusted continuous abundance flow. This wasn't naive charity or religious obligation. It was profound psychological strategy, breaking scarcity mentality through actions demonstrating overflow consciousness. Today, we recognize this principle in strategic investments in personal development, donations that expand reciprocity networks, and understanding that stagnant energy never multiplies. Money, like occult knowledge, must circulate to grow. But here's the critical detail separating effective practitioners from those merely playing with these techniques. Grimoires always emphasized ritual persistence. This was never about performing one ceremony and expecting miracles. It was about establishing daily consistent practices that gradually reprogram every aspect of consciousness related to wealth. An alchemist would dedicate months or years refining their manifestation capacity through disciplined repetition. Each ritual reinforced previous ones, creating momentum that eventually became unstoppable. And this is where everything connects to your life right now. These ancestral techniques don't require belief in literal magic to function effectively. They only demand that you understand the underlying psychological mechanisms and apply them with total consistency. When you create a visual symbol representing your financial objective and contemplate it daily during focus states, you're using applied neuroscience disguised as magical ritual. When you choose specific times for visualization practices based on your personal circadian rhythms, you're doing modern temporal alignment. When you structure elaborate routines of affirmation and directed action, you're creating unconscious commitment through behavioral investment. The question becomes simple. If these practices crossed millennia while preserving their effectiveness, what prevents you from adapting them now? If you comment the word prosperity below, you're signaling recognition of these ancestral systems' power and readiness to explore applying them to your financial reality. What do you think? Do these ancient manifestation codes still work in our contemporary world, or have they lost relevance? Share your reflection in the comments. And if this content expanded your perception about esoteric wealth, consider leaving your like and subscribing to continue this revelation journey. What if mystical mechanics are actually neuroscience in disguise? There's an uncomfortable truth that grimoires reveal without apology. Manifestation isn't instant miracle work. It's consciousness engineering applied with surgical precision. The oldest texts make this explicit through their meticulous instructions about preparation, timing, and ritual execution. There was zero room for improvisation or superficial magical thinking. What existed was a structured system of mental reprogramming through techniques that contemporary neuroscience is only beginning to validate scientifically. The concept of vibrational resonance runs through every serious prosperity grimoire. When alchemical texts instruct raising your energetic frequency before abundance rituals, they're describing something that modern brain research confirms. Your neural activity determines what types of information you process and which opportunities you can actually perceive. Someone operating in mental states of scarcity, fear, and contraction literally cannot see the same possibilities as someone functioning from abundance, confidence, and expansion. Ancient masters understood this intuitively and created specific practices to induce mental states conducive to financial manifestation. But that's not the deepest layer of sophistication. The true mystical mechanics reside in what grimoires called intentional charging of objects and symbols. When you consecrate an amulet, sigil, or any physical object through elaborate ritual, you're creating what modern psychology identifies as a behavioral anchor. That object becomes an automatic trigger firing specific mental states whenever you interact with it. A CEO using a particular pen to sign major contracts is applying the same principle alchemists used when consecrating prosperity rings, transforming common objects into tools for rapid access to personal power states. The ritual consistency that grimoires demanded reveals another layer of psychological genius. This wasn't superstition or blind obsession. It was deep understanding of how habits shape identity and identity shapes reality. When you execute the same prosperity ritual daily for months, you're not merely repeating actions. You're literally reconstructing your self-image from someone who occasionally thinks about wealth to someone whose very identity is interwoven with abundance. This identity transformation separates superficial manifestation from manifestation. That becomes your permanent new normal. But here's the crucial detail that destroys most attempts at applying these techniques. Grimoires always warned against expecting magical instant results. The instruction was clear: execute rituals with absolute faith in the system's effectiveness, but completely detach from needing immediate outcomes. This paradox wasn't contradiction, it was profound wisdom about how the unconscious mind operates. When you practice with total intention, but without desperate outcome seeking, your subconscious receives the message that you already are abundant. You're simply aligning external circumstances with this internal reality. When you practice with anxiety and neediness, you reinforce precisely the scarcity state you're attempting to transcend. And this is where everything shifts for those who truly comprehend. Mystical mechanics work because they operate on consciousness layers that rational thinking cannot directly control. You don't convince your unconscious through logical arguments. You convince it through rich sensory experiences, symbols loaded with emotional meaning, and structured repetition that establishes new automatic patterns of perception and behavior. This isn't magic in any supernatural sense. It's advanced application of psychological principles our culture forgot because it fell in love with the illusion that only conscious reason matters. Alchemists knew better. They understood that the conscious mind is merely the visible tip of a massive iceberg of unconscious processes that actually determine your material life results. How to turn ancient grimoires into your personal prosperity blueprint. We've reached the point where ancestral theory must become applicable contemporary practice. Grimoires weren't written to sit on shelves as historical curiosities. They were created as operational manuals for actual transformation. And the powerful truth is you don't need to master medieval Latin or source exotic ingredients to extract the functional essence of these practices and integrate them into your financial life starting immediately. Your first step is designing a personalized financial sigil system. Select one specific, measurable prosperity objective. Not something vague like wanting wealth, but something crystalline like reaching a particular monthly income or manifesting a specific professional opportunity. Reduce that goal to a short phrase: Then remove all repeated letters, keeping only unique ones. Use those letters to sketch an abstract symbol that feels aesthetically powerful to you. This sigil now carries your encoded intention. Place it where your eyes encounter it daily: phone screen, bathroom mirror, wallet. Each time you see the symbol, breathe deeply and allow the sensation of already having achieved this goal to flood your body for several seconds. But isolated sigil work isn't sufficient by itself. Grimoires always emphasized consistent energetic alignment practices, which today we translate as conscious mental state management. Establish a 5-minute morning ritual where you close your eyes and visualize your desired financial reality with rich sensory detail. Don't just see bank account numbers. Feel the texture of financial security. Hear the conversations you'd have. Notice how your body would move through the world when this abundance is your normal. This daily practice functions like ancient invocation rituals. It summons internal states that naturally attract corresponding external circumstances. The cosmic tithing concept appearing in various grimoires deserves special attention. This isn't religious obligation but psychological strategy for breaking scarcity programming. Choose a fixed percentage of your current income, even if minimal, and allocate it monthly towards something representing expansion investment, education increasing your capabilities, donations expanding your reciprocity network, or resources improving your productive capacity. This consistent action signals to your unconscious that you operate from abundance, not scarcity, fundamentally reprogramming your financial identity. But there's one final element determining whether these practices produce genuine transformation or merely esoteric entertainment: ritual consistency above momentary motivation. Alchemists practiced their rituals even when they didn't feel like it, when doubts emerged, when results seemed distant, because they understood that power resides precisely in persistence through resistance. Establish unshakable commitment to execute your manifestation practices daily for minimum 90 days, regardless of how you feel or what external evidence appears. This period represents minimum time for deep reprogramming of unconscious patterns related to money and opportunity. And this is where everything becomes real in your direct experience. Because true magic never lived in ancient texts. It always resided in your capacity to consciously direct the immense resources sleeping inside you. Grimoires are merely maps. The territory is your own psyche waiting to be explored, reprogrammed, and aligned with abundance that already exists as latent potential. Every ritual you execute, every sigil you contemplate, every alignment practice you maintain is doing exactly what alchemists did: transmuting the lead of limited consciousness into the gold of conscious manifestation. The final question is devastatingly simple. Will you study these principles as intellectual curiosity or apply them as an operational system of transformation? If you comment the word alchemy below, you signal recognition that you're ready to transcend financial limitations through ancestral practices adapted to modern reality. How do you see the role of ritual consistency in prosperity manifestation? Essential or optional? Share your perspective in the comments. And if this journey through forgotten grimoires expanded your understanding about esoteric wealth, leave your like, subscribe to the channel, and share this knowledge with someone ready to unlock their own financial destiny through timeless wisdom.